Good afternoon, everybody. From myself, I'm Chris Humphrey, the Executive Director of the EU-ASEAN Business Council based here in Singapore. Welcome to this latest webinar from us. This one's entitled Banking on Digital Inclusivity in ASEAN Post-Pandemic. We have a very good and esteemed panel here today and a very excellent moderator, a good friend of mine, Hans Renz, as well. So let me just introduce our speakers first. We have Hugh Wee Chong, who is Vice President Investment Development at the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation based in KL. Good afternoon. We have Edmund Lui, who is Director DVU-CA and an Ambassador and Council Member at the Asia Pacific MSME Trade Coalition, very important body supporting the interests of the micro, small and medium enterprises across Asia Pacific. We have Bang Bang Moranto, who is the Regional Vice President and Head of Financial Services Industry at SAP Asia Pacific and Japan, also based here in Singapore. And then we have Michael Moon, who is Managing Director for Payments and Trade Markets Asia Pacific for SWIFT. SWIFT, we all know, of course, it's the code you see on your bank, but they do an awful lot more than that behind the scenes. Our moderator today is Hans Renz, Managing Partner at Renz & Partners, a very good friend of the Business Council and of the business community across the region. A quick bit of housekeeping. If you have questions you wish to ask, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll pick the questions up from there. But I will now hand the reins over to Hans to kick off the debate and the discussion. So Hans, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Delighted to be here, delighted to moderate this important session. We're really going to discuss how COVID has really speeded up the whole transformation in ASEAN, especially SMEs. So I think we're going to approach this from different angles, and in around half an hour. We throw it open to the floor, so please prepare to ask questions. And the way we're going to do this is, if you would like to ask a question, please push the raise your hand button. Then we can unmute you, and after you can introduce yourself, if you can please indicate who you would like to answer your question. Yes, great. It would be very helpful. I think if we can all go around, starting with you, Chong, from the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. I think that's really the key institution on the government side in this. We go around, but first with Mdec. Can you say a little bit what the role of Mdec is, and especially what Mdec is doing to assisting this digital transformation in Malaysia?
Sure. Thanks, Hans. Pleasure to be here on this webinar. I think, first of all, let me introduce Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. It started off actually 24 years ago, not a new organization in that sense, but it started off as Multimedia Development Corporation. Some of you may have heard of the MSC initiative or Multimedia Super Corridor initiative that started in Malaysia 24 years ago. And Mdec has been a guardian of that initiative since then. Yeah. So, but of course, when we started off 24 years ago, we were focusing on the development of the ICT industry as part of the knowledge-based industry that Malaysia is trying to get into. But fast forward to today, so we are now named as Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, leading the digital economy forward on behalf of the government, focusing on three things. First of all is what we call empowering Malaysia with digital skills. Right. We all know that talent is one of the key area for the success of digital economy. So we are focusing on that. And second is what we call enabling digitally powered businesses. That is basically digitalization of Malaysian businesses. Yeah. And the third one is, which is what I'm very much involved in Mdec, is to drive the digital investment, getting companies to set up the digital operations in Malaysia. So these are the so-called the three key pillars of Mdec right now.
Good. And can you say a little bit more what specifically Mdec is doing? We want to get it later. No, but please do it now.
Yeah, sure. I think if you, in terms of digitalization during this pandemic period, we have been having a very busy time. focusing on helping a lot of micro SMEs as well as SMEs to digitalize, right? Especially in the lockdown, or in Malaysia, we call it movement control order. So a lot of companies were not allowed to operate initially during the initial part of the MCO. And or you have to operate either on an online basis, or employees or organization have to actually work from home. So we work with a lot of large tech companies to enable whether organizations to allow their employees to work from home, like the tool that we're using now, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Microsoft Teams, Google, and all the big tech companies have their own tools that enable organizations to have their staff working from home. So we actually work with all these big tech companies to make an offer literally free of charge to all these small enterprises to allow their staff to work from home, and then getting a lot of them to go online to trade, which they were initially in quite comfortable position before this. So, but COVID struck, and a pandemic has actually forced their hand in terms of digitalization. So we actually say that COVID-19 has actually accelerated the digital transformation in Malaysia, and we are very much part of that. Not part of COVID, but part of the initiative to push through the digitalization.
Good, great. Excellent, thanks very much. Bambang, I mean, SAP, big company, very much involved in this. Can you say a bit more about the role of SAP in this, around Southeast Asia?
Thank you, Hans, actually, for inviting me actually to speak in this forum, right? So indeed, actually, that SAP is one of the largest business application software company in the world. So we claim actually that 77% of the business transaction is passing through our software. But it's not so many people actually knows that 83% actually of the SAP customers in Southeast Asia, especially, is actually SME, right? So it's a big chunk of our customers that we serve is actually SMEs. So this is pretty much driven actually by the fact that many SMEs are still pretty much running manual, the way actually they run their business. And we see, of course, actually the momentum. In fact, actually this COVID is a fantastic momentum actually for SMEs to get themselves actually digitized, right? So we obviously see that digitalization is not just only the front office, but it's actually across, you know, the different business processes actually that any SMEs operate, from the front to the middle and also to the back office, right? So the logistic, the supply chains, the inventory management, all the way actually to the sales marketing, right? So yeah, so it's an opportunity, of course, where SAP will be able to bring actually this technology to our SMEs customers.
Good. That's very, very clear, Bambang. Thanks very much. Edmund, you represent the largest organization of SMEs, yes, in the region. Can you say,
yes,
a bit more about exactly what the organization does and how you are assisting your members in this process?
Right. So AMTC basically stands for Asia Pacific, so we cover the whole of Asia Pac. MSME stands for micro, small, medium enterprises. So we cover from micro, which can be 1-2 persons, all the way to medium enterprises, AMTC Trade Coalition. So we have members across the whole Asia Pac, and actually even members from US and Europe have asked to join us to be part of this whole movement. So AMTC is actually a non-profit organization. We started about 4 years ago. What we realized was that there are SMEs in every country, like what Bambang has mentioned. SME form a very big core of countries, of economies. In fact, when we look at the individual countries, we did data analysis. About 80 to 90% of the number of companies in each country is made out of SMEs. And in some economies, SMEs contribute as much as 46 to 50% of the GDP, right? So SME play a big part. We also employ lots of employees, right, in the workforce, the labor force. So how we have been helping SMEs? Well, few things. As the name AMTC implies, we look at trade, right? So we help cross-border trade for SMEs. We help them in area of understanding the free trade agreements. We help them to understand how you fill out forms, even as simple as that, because some SMEs don't have the manpower. They don't know how to fill out all the immigration forms, custom forms, right? We help them in logistics, in freight, understanding how to ship things out from one place to another. I think some of the countries in Southeast Asia can be a bit more challenging for some of our SMEs, right? Recently, we also moved into payment issues, payment option, online e-payments that some of our SMEs face. So we help them in all these areas. We hold workshops, we hold seminars, conferences, and before COVID, we used to have a big summit every year for all our members. We currently have about 3,000 members across Asia Pac, right? So we help them in whatever ways we can to help them do cross-border trade, and yeah, basically that's exactly what we do.
And that's very helpful. And the organization is headquartered in Singapore.
That's right.
Okay.
But we do have some of the countries we have a lot of members like India, Indonesia, Philippines. So we actually appoint country leaders like local chapters, so to speak, and we also have ambassadors to help us rally the members and gather on the ground what are the issues they face. So our members strike across all industries, all areas, right? And they also cover goods and services. We don't just have goods, but services also, you can do cross-border trade, right? Nowadays, when you talk about digital services is huge. And we also have lots of issues there that we can talk about later on.
Yeah, perhaps we'll be later after this round. It will be very helpful if you can share a bit more about what you see as the main challenges are for your members, especially cross-border. And very interesting to hear also that you bring up payments, because then we can really move over right away to Michael. Michael, I mean, everybody has heard of SWIFT. But I think it will be very helpful if you can say a little bit more about exactly what SWIFT does and what the role of SWIFT is in this process.
Thanks, Hans. Yes, SWIFT has been a systemically important platform for the financial industry for about 45 years now. We were formed as a cooperative, which means that we're not in business to maximize profit or financial outcomes. We're in business to solve problems that exist at scale across the financial industry, whether it's in cross-border payments or capital market transactions or trade financing instructions. To give you an idea of the scale, Hans, we have 12,000 connected customers around the world. Here in Southeast Asia, we have about 800 connections to the SWIFT network. And really what we're doing is working with our customers, which are made up of financial institutions, large and small. We have 200 customers here in Singapore, for example, with corporations that are connected to the network, or services that we provide towards central banks for their payment and settlement systems, so the safe and reliable and secure settlement of high-value payment systems in a place like Singapore or Thailand, Malaysia. We have these services, but we're about identifying where the friction points are and the problems are in conducting financial transactions, and working with the industry such that you can remove those and you can drive cost out of the industry, and then you can improve the lives of people, of companies, and you can, if you like, from a payment perspective, enhance the experience of end customers for financial institutions. So we think about it as moving, for example, cross-border payments to a truly instant experience. Today, about 50% of cross-border payments are done in 30 minutes or less with money in the end account, but we'd like to see that moving to a truly instant scenario. And then really working to help with the experiences that are provided to customers, whereby you might, for example, have improvements in the upfront processing of payments. So being able to have a better user experience when you make a payment through your financial institution, that kind of thing. And I just wanted to mention, we've held our SIBOS annual convention this year. We did it digitally for the first time ever. We always meet face to face with about 10,000 people from the financial industry, and we've done that digitally. One thing that we've announced publicly related to this event is that we're investing in a new transaction management platform at Swift, which is designed to further improve the way that the industry can move their transactions on an instant basis and with a minimum of friction.
That's very interesting. Can you say a little bit more about specifically how do you see, what are your biggest challenges around Southeast Asia, and how has COVID and the lockdowns, how have they had an impact on this?
Yeah, so one part of the industry this was really felt acutely, Hans, was in trade, and we saw it with our customers with respect to the trade financing instructions that support the ability for parties to confidently conduct business with each other. And when you are in an environment where movement is restricted, like we had for many months across the region, and we're still experiencing in some countries, trade documents are not freely able to move. They used to be couried around on the back of motorcycles, for example, right, to move between different parties. So that has really dragged on the performance of the financial transactions that support this safe conduct of trade. One thing we did very early on in the pandemic is we worked with our customers to help them actually move some of these material processes into a dematerialized and a digitalized manner, meaning we took one very prominent transaction that is exchanged between financial institutions, the letter of credit, and that has always been done on the Swift network, but we coupled that with a service whereby a bank can securely exchange the documents in a digital form together with that trade finance instruction payload, and to use that as a mechanism to get that confidence to the other party quickly, right? That's really helped. We've had banks like DBS involved in that, JP Morgan, a number of others, and you'll see us do a lot more with that as well. There are some residual problems there, though. Not many countries share a consistent, if you like, legal framework towards the way that they view digitized documents. So there's work to do at an international level in terms of harmonizing and standardizing the way that companies, financial institutions, different jurisdictions have had the confidence that this particular digitalized instrument carries the same legal weight and power that the paper format did. So that all gets worked through. But the one thing for me that the pandemic has exposed is, yes, you have this massive digitalization that's going on, but it also exposes how much further we still need to go. Southeast Asia is very, very fragmented, unfortunately, in both trade and in cross-border payments as well.
That's very helpful, Michael. So, Edmund, I assume your members working with Swift on this, because these issues around having the right paperwork digitized, being allowed, that is, I assume it's a big issue for your members.
Yes. So one of them actually just wrote to me this morning, based in one of the Southeast Asian countries, and they said, "Wow." I was asking him how's situation, right? How's the business? Is he able to still do any cross-border trade? And he said, well, internally, the system, the government, they are not able to accept payments, e-payments. He didn't elaborate on all the details, but I'm sure he's not the only one that has to work through all these barriers or challenges to accept payment. And so he has been just restricted to local sales. He can't go cross-border. So I hope all these intricacies, I know payment is a big area. It's a whole total new topic altogether, and lots of challenges there. But if we can work it out, I'm sure more companies, SMEs can afford cross-border trade.
No, I think that's a very important point, Edmund. And as Chris can explain more, I mean, that is something Chris and the team and the members of the EU-APC are working very hard on. And they are, as we hear, they're perfectly aligned with SMEs around Southeast Asia. How does Mdec sees this to you?
Yeah, I think I agree definitely with both Michael and Edmund. In Malaysia itself, as Edmund have rightly pointed out, micro SMEs or SMEs play a big part in the economy. If I remember correctly, SMEs make up to around probably even as high as 98% of the number of businesses in Malaysia, contributing to probably around 40% of them. And the challenges that Michael and Edmund have mentioned is not an alien to Malaysian companies as well. What I personally feel, I think there's the view across the board as well, that intra country trade within ASEAN is an opportunity that is, there's tremendous opportunity there. But of course, payment becomes an issue. In Malaysia itself, we categorize the SMEs to a few areas, or a few levels. The first level is even getting them online to start off with. There are a lot of those mom and pop shops that are operating in small villages. They have good products, but they are confined to the traditional boundary of their geographical area within a village, right? So the first thing first is to get them to go online. But to go online is not just it's not about getting them to trade online already. Is to at least start the marketing, online marketing, right? Get into Facebook, get into all the different social media to sell their products. Yeah. Then, of course, the delivery comes into the picture, the supply chain and whatnot. And how do you deliver to places that have placed an order, which is 300 kilometers away? And then how do you get the payment done? So all these issues are real for Malaysian SMEs as well, right? And getting them onto the national online marketplace is the next level. That eventually the utopia for us is the cross-border trade. But what we are doing right now is, of course, getting them into cross-border trade is also one of the area of focus. Identifying SMEs who can or who have the products that can go cross-border, right? Whether it's from a timely delivery perspective or the product that is wanted overseas, right? And is up to international standards. Or a lot of them even have great products, but they don't know how to do the packaging. So we're actually going down to the fundamental of things, not just from a digitalization perspective.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bambang, will be good to hear from you how you see some of these challenges and how SAP is assisting companies to address them.
Yeah, so, well, in this case, of course, actually, we see collaboration that is required actually among multiple parties, right? So SAP as an enterprise and private organization, actually, it's not going to be able to solve actually this problem on our own, right? So we got to work actually with the government. We got to work actually with you know, the association, the SME associations, to be able actually to work together, whereby you know, the standard actually has to be put in place the way I see it, right? So, and even actually the adoption of some of the approach, right? So which in ASEAN, I can see actually that, you know, let's say even in the cloud adoption approach, right? So it's different actually from one country to another country, right? So I think we need actually to really look at this as a partnership between, you know, private, government, and also a different actually players actually within that particular ecosystem, right?
Sure. Of course, absolutely, Bambang, fully agree. But can you say a little bit more about what SAP does in terms of providing solutions to address some of these issues?
Yeah, so there are many things actually that we do actually in terms of the way how we really actually try to bring actually the different players together, right? So for example, actually in Singapore, we work actually with one of the bank actually where, you know, traditionally the bank is only offering financing, loans, taking deposit actually from the corporates, from the SMEs, right? So the traditional way actually how they're dealing actually with the banking business. But we see actually that the problem that the SME has is the way actually even they run the business is pretty much manual, right? So, and so in this case, of course, the bank actually goes beyond actually the traditional banking boundary by helping actually these SMEs companies to digitize the way they operate, right? So SAP has a solution which is called a Business One solution, which is an end-to-end front, middle, and also back office solutions cater actually to the small and medium enterprise. So what SAP and the financial institution here does is basically we package the solutions. We enable actually the SMEs companies actually to digitize the way they operate, and at the same time actually connected to the back end cash management, the core banking system actually that the bank provides. So in this case, then there's a seamless integration between the SME corporate technology back actually to the bank back end, right? So then the bank actually will be able to take more proactive approach in terms of providing a financing, looking at actually the gap between the physical supply chain and also the financial supply chains, for example, providing AR financing, all those stuff to these SMEs customers.
It sounds like a vicious circle if I listen to all of you together. Providing all these services to make it all work better. That sounds good. Is that correct, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, Bambang sort of summarized one of the harder issues. We at Swift have a great relationship with SAP because they're really helping solve some of these residual frictions that exist within banks and particularly corporations. So, you need to be able to adopt these services and strip out that friction. Some banks, for example, still can't operate on a 24/7 basis. Their systems are not designed to credit money on an instant basis to an account. Just to give you a couple of examples that are really important. So, I'm sure Bambang is seeing this as well. The operating burden from a cost perspective towards the bank these days is really quite challenging. So, traditionally they've operated big, heavy, localized footprints of infrastructure. That's all moving to the cloud now, so you'll get the benefit there. They're investing in things like APIs to really have sort of trimmed down and very highly efficient consumption of different services that can be applied within the bank. And then the other major cost driver, if you take cross-border payments, depending on the way you look at it, it's somewhere between 20 and 30% of the cost of a cross-border payment is consumed by compliance, performing financial crime and compliance activities. So we really focus on that, and we mutualize services across our industry such that they're shared, and the investment in those services, if you like, shared across a much larger base of customers, and it continues to help drive down the cost of doing things like financial crime and compliance.
Wow. So we mean it may be a bit unfair to ask you, but since you are the government representative on this panel, I'm going to ask you anyway. So we hear a lot about, we have fantastic stories, especially on the back end. What is happening to drive this digitalization? Maybe you hear a lot about government regulations that are not really suited for cross-border payments, etc. How does the Malaysian government and Mdec view this?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, the cross-border or intra-trade, even within ASEAN alone, there are a lot of opportunity to tap into. But this opportunity need to be worked on collaboratively between the countries. I think there is an initiative. I'm not sure how far and how fast it has moved because that actually comes under a different ministry. But I do personally hear of it from time to time, that this is an area that the countries have to come collectively to work on it. But I think from Malaysian government perspective, at least the area that we are working on right now, the government is getting progressively more open in terms of reviewing the policies, especially policies that will enable digitalization. I think a good example would be the Central Bank of Malaysia has recently announced that they are looking at granting the digital bank license. Although this has nothing to do or not directly related to what we are talking about cross-border, but it shows you the progressiveness of the government now looking at digitalization itself, right? There are a few other areas that they're looking at. Even digital ID is an area that's been talking about for a long time, but they are concrete steps that we are seeing right now that are then being put into place.
I mean, also in this case, it's great to hear how progressive and how forward-looking the Malaysian government is. I think some other governments in the region can still learn quite a lot from that, especially the way you're assisting your SMEs. Edmund, how does it sound? What to you? What Bambang and Michael are saying?
Yeah, I mean at least it's not darkness, right? There's some light that we're walking towards. Maybe it's when Hugh was talking about is that the cross-border payment interoperability network system. Yeah. I think that's for the ASEAN, and quite a few countries have already committed to it and want to resolve it. And if that comes about, I think a lot of the issues will be resolved, right? Yes, the 20 to 30% of the cross-border payments being consumed by compliance is a very big thing. We have some SMEs in some of the developing countries who say, you know, I pay this, my item is this amount, but when I go on to cross-border trade and I sell this, some of the taxes, the things I have to pay cost more than my item itself. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. So these are real issues that they face. Yeah.
Good. Great. This is all very, very, very helpful. So we are now halfway, and as I had announced at the beginning, we would like also the participation of all the attendees. So who would like to ask the first question? And then if you can please push the raise your hand button, we can give you the floor. Andrew 10. Andrew, can you please introduce yourself, share with us your affiliation, and who would you like to address the question to? Go ahead.
Okay. I am the MD of Consult Myanmar. I run a consulting company in Yangon itself. Yeah. So I would like to address to Michael. Like for example, now when we order anything, it is from Lazada or Shopee, you know, the delivery is so fast and so cheap. Now, when it comes to payment, cross-border payment, it doesn't act. This sort of frictionless, painless payment don't really exist. Okay, especially with commercial transactions. What can we do to make payment easier? Because bear in mind that most of the business are SME. Okay, if the transaction is only $100 and you are going to charge them $40 for one Swift transaction, it's crazy. Okay, so that's one of the challenges that we face with our client. And a lot of time they say, can I pay you in Singapore? What do you mean? You are Singaporean. Can I pay you in Singapore? I say, okay. So we have no choice because they have an office in Singapore and they want to transact with us in Singapore dollars. Because locally, when we do the pay now, QR code, whatever, there's no charge. You know, so they are trying to bypass the friction. So I mean, I hope you think about this. I know that it costs money to maintain a credible, good system, but this is something that a lot of SME ask us about. What can I do to remove all this friction?
Michael?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Drew. And firstly, you should ask more of your bank. Is number one. Yeah, and secondly, just to be really clear, the $40, and this is to my point about asking more of your bank, is not a SWIFT charge. Yeah, SWIFT conducts tens of millions of transactions a day. Last time I checked, there were about 150 million in an average day going across the network, and that is done at an average cost of 2 or 3 cents, right? 2 or 3 euro cents to the financial institution for each transaction. So just to put that there, and then you're right, Andrew. The experience when you're making a cross-border payment through your bank can vary. One initiative that we've put in market over the last few years is to address a lot of these residual frictions in cross-border payments. It's known as SWIFT GPI, Global Payments Innovation. And one of the things that we did with that was introduced a unique identifier for every payment, meaning that now a payment can be tracked around the world in the same way that you track that parcel that you bought from Lazada. Yeah. And now that we have that identifier, we actually know how fast the transactions are. And in the most prominent cross-border payment corridors, about 70% of transactions are completed in 30 minutes or less. Yeah. Many cross-border payments are actually completed in seconds. You know, markets have been talking about extending domestic systems. You mentioned Pay Now. There's one in Malaysia. We have panelists from Malaysia today. The RPP in Malaysia extending these cross-border. It's very different when you go domestic to cross-border. You enter a new compliance regime, and as I mentioned earlier, that is much of the cost burden for banks. There is a different cyber threat surface, if you like, or set of risks that financial institutions will want to manage as well. So, you know, that I'm sort of not saying that's an excuse, right? But that is some of the explanation of the operating cost base that goes into cross-border payments, which is different from domestic as well. And then, you know, I mentioned this new strategy that we've launched. We're quite confident that this is going to help actually speed up even more some of these cross-border payments. Another thing that we're doing with this, and this is a very unique proposition of any payment network in the world, is all of this will be foundationally delivered through what's known as the ISO 20022 standard, which is an information-rich transaction messaging standard for XML and digital economy. So you can carry more information. You can have information that's used to support that compliance process I mentioned, or provide a better customer experience. So there's some way to go, but you know, hopefully, Andrew, you should be starting to experience better cross-border payment services from your bank.
Mm-hmm. Also in Myanmar, yes. Good. Perhaps Edmund, you also want to address this issue.
Okay. I mean, I think we need one thing. Okay, we have been very much involved in is education, right? It's like a lot of our SMEs, they don't even know how to get on it, and if they get on it and they see the cost, then they say, oh, you know, easy to push a thing and say, oh, whether it's a SWIFT, whether it's a bank or the government in general, they'll tell me, oh, it doesn't work. So we need to do a lot of education and tell them how this thing works, why there are these things in place, and how they can get through the loops and to make sure that they have a smooth transaction. So this is what actually we also get ourselves involved in quite a lot of the time to educate our SMEs. Actually, after this, maybe I can get in touch with Andrew quite a bit to work on things and discuss further things on these things, because this morning the email that I got from my SME member is actually from Cambodia, right? And this is exactly what he's saying, right? It just doesn't work for me. The payments are too much. I have to pay too much of this. And so he just doesn't want to focus international anymore. He just wants to stay local. And I think it's a lot of education, a lot of going through and say, these are the steps we need to do. Let's handhold you. And if we have a consultancy that's based in Cambodia that's been doing this and helping SMEs, we can definitely put them together and be in the country to help them go through all these things, work through the regulations and the policies.
Yes, sure. And really, it may be helpful for all of us if you could say a little bit more about exactly what your role is in Myanmar. Wait, we have to unmute you.
Sorry. Yeah, addressing. Yep. Hello.
Yeah. So can you say a little bit more? Will be helpful for all of us to understand what exactly is you do to help SMEs in Myanmar with their cross-border trade?
No, we help. We are a business consultancy, so we help them with market entry, understanding the local law, and then if need be, find a partner, incorporation, corporate secretariat. So so once they become our customer, there are a lot of what we call in Chinese, all the small things that you need to do for them. Like maybe 6 months later, they say, I want to change my company address. I want to change the director. So all these are not big stuff. We still need to service them. And if they say, I want to change the director, you say, fine, it's $100 US. And if they have to remit the money from overseas, then basically the costs go up. And these are things that company all have to do. They have to change directors. They have to change authorized signatory for banks and all that. And we will have to help them do all this thing. So all these are small things. But once they become a customer, it's a steady cash flow for us, right? So we do not want to make the barrier to transaction so high. We want to make it so easy that people, every time they have a problem, they come to us, and then and we just solve it for them. So one of the pain point is basically the cross-border payment. Yeah. So this is something I think all of you should think about, because you should look at what the Ninja Van and what the Alibaba has done for delivery, okay, and how they have managed to bring the cost down so little. And just with an app, I can track where my parcel is. And they can tell us, COVID-19, if you do not want us to come to your house, let us know. We'll drop it into like a box, a pickup box, and then we give you a PIN number, and you're gonna pick it up at your nearest train station. And that's it. It's so painless. And with cross-border payment, that is not happening.
But you just heard Michael's working on it.
Work with the bank, work with the bank like TBS out of Singapore. I'm sure they can help you with your cross-border payment. Yeah. So come and talk to me. I can help point you to banks that have been investing in these cross-border GPI services that offer you full tracking end to end, right through to the corporate, that kind of thing as well. So, and then ask more of your bank.
Right. No. It's one thing for us who are digitally savvy, but most of our clients are not digitally savvy. Okay, so basically the pain point is when you are the owner of the company and you're not digitally savvy. I think that is the pain point. So most SME are not that digitally savvy. So that's something that would actually set them back when they go international.
Sure, and we also have to admit, of course, you have chosen to operate in a country which is rapidly changing, which doesn't have a very sophisticated banking sector yet. So this may be part of the problem. But can you say a bit more? But does SAP play any role in this? Where you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was actually on mute just now. So well, we don't really have actually the cross-border payment engine, I must say, right? So, but we work actually with a company like Swift, which is our big partner actually, where we again actually open up our ERP solutions. We have actually the tool actually that is embedded inside our solutions, which kind of map actually to Swift ISO 2022, right? Translating actually all this basically payment instruction actually from the ERP system to Swift. And Michael actually mentioned about the Swift GPI. So we are also working actually to see actually how the integration between the ERP, which is eventually going to be used by the SMEs customers, connecting that actually back actually to the Swift GPI, right? So that's what we do actually from our side to be able to have a smooth, connection actually between the system that is eventually used by the SME customers, go actually to our partner Swift, for example.
Good. That sounds really great, Bambang.
Hans. Yeah. Hugh here. If I may throw some.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may chip in by throwing some more words into the discussion itself. Of course, the discussion is about cross-border, and Andrew brought up a very pertinent point in terms of cross-border payment. But I'd like to bring up another issue, which I'm sure Edmund will be nodding his head. That is cross-border supply chain.
Yeah.
But we have not even talked about delivery of goods, because what Andrew was talking about is delivery of services. Right? When it comes to delivery of goods from one country to another, the custom clearance or custom procedures varies tremendously from one country to another. Payment, you can talk about similar standards, right? We have the SWIFT standards or international payment standards are a bit similar. It's just that the processes within the different banks differs, and that probably caused the cost variation. But when it comes to custom clearance, it's a different topic altogether. Not that I have a solution to that. I just want to bring up this point itself.
No, but it's a very important point. And again, Chris and the EU-ABC are also working hard on that. But can you say a little bit more what Malaysia and what ASEAN is doing to address that and harmonize the rules and regulations for customs clearance?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm not the authority to talk about that. I only can talk about what we know. That is really an initiative that is probably the right time, or never a right time, but even more pressing right now, especially with the kind of economic situation that we are facing. I mentioned about intra-country trade within ASEAN, where there's tremendous opportunity that is really untapped. So it becomes even more, it gives even more impetus to the government within ASEAN to solve this problem in terms of inter-country custom clearance. Yeah,
absolutely. Especially if we see that in the light of the ASEAN Economic Community we have been promised.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think Edmund's also waiting for it. Great. Shall we? Thanks, Andrew. Does it answer your question? You'd like to follow up?
Yeah, I think this is something that everybody have to think about. It's not going to be solved overnight. No. All you are, in a way, stakeholder in this sort of transaction. So I think you should be the evangelist to promote, frictionless, as little friction as possible in all cross-border transaction, whether it's financial or logistic or custom clearing. Yeah.
As you can hear, Andrew, all members of this panel are on your side and are working on that. But, thanks for your question. Good.
If I may just add something on the trade space too. The friction we've been speaking about in cross-border payments exists in trade too, and you're talking about supply chain and the financing side of that. We've been very, very involved in that too. One of the things we did this week is we made an announcement on a memorandum of intent together with the Trade Trust organization here in Singapore. It's an MOI between SWIFT and the Infocom Media Development Authority in Singapore. And Trade Trust, for those you don't know, is really looking to sort of solve in a very open source, standardized way all of these different things that occur in trade, right? Whether it be customs or things that happen in ports or things that happen in the financing leg as well. So we're obviously working on the financial transaction side of things too. But what we want to be able to do is help our customers kind of benefit from an infrastructure and a framework like what is being done through Trade Trust in Singapore, such that the financial institutions and the corporations on the SWIFT network kind of get the benefit of being able to efficiently and safely and reliably connect to that infrastructure with the highest levels of availability. And the key word is trust. Yeah. So you can't have in trade unknown actors interacting with each other and not knowing who they are and what they're doing as well. So we were really pleased to be able to establish that relationship with Trade Trust here in Singapore. It's going to be a long journey for us, but hopefully we'll be able to keep moving out of the system some of these frictions that hold the industry back.
And Michael, it's very interesting. Is that just in Singapore, or can you say a bit more about initiatives, similar initiatives you have in other countries around Southeast Asia?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned earlier we've been digitalizing some of the documents that are carried with trade financing instructions, such as letter of credit. That's being done on a global basis, by the way. Ideally we're looking for things that scale well globally. That's the way that things are delivered at the lowest possible cost. And that's, if you like, right in the heart of the transaction. Then our approach is really to work with selective initiatives such as trade trust. And, you know, many of your listeners and viewers on this webinar will know that the trade market space is really kind of being challenged to digitalize quite quickly. And there are, at our last count, there are at least 40 new external trade marketplaces that are trying to do one thing or another with a new technology or a new set of participants acting together, formed on a new network, that kind of thing, to bring that efficiency and digitalization to the industry. Clearly, 40 parties is something that can't work long term. Yeah, that will have to rationalize over time, such that we can all get the benefit of international standards and harmonization across the industry. So, but you know, Hans, we work in all countries in Southeast Asia. We operate in over 200 countries around the world. Pretty much, 90+% of cross-border financial transaction activity with the largest, institutions in countries across Southeast Asia will be passing over at one way point of time the SWIFT network, right? There will be lots of other parties involved in intermediating transactions and that kind of thing as well. But
thanks very much, Michael. That's great to hear. We have the next question is Mohammed Saleh. Good afternoon, Mohammed. If you can please introduce yourself, say a bit about your affiliation, and who would you like to address the question to? One second. Yeah.
Just trying to unmute him, Hans.
Can I do that? Go ahead.
My name is Mohammed Saleh, and I want to address my question to Michael Mon. I want to know about the SWIFT Singapore and GPI Singapore work, and what is the strategic in the moment in the ASEAN Pacific region.
So, Mohammed, can you say a bit more about your own, who you represent, your affiliation? I missed that.
I represent Istismar Asia. I am entrepreneur, and I want to know about the SWIFT Singapore and GPI Singapore cross-border how work, and what is the strategic in the ASEAN Pacific in the moment.
Okay, good. And where are you calling from, Mohammed?
What is the strategic of the?
I heard your question, Mohammed, but I was just asking, where are you calling from?
I am from Malaysia, from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Mohammed. Thanks for the question. Michael, can you answer that?
Yeah, I'll try and answer that. As I mentioned, we have a new strategy which we've launched globally, by the way, to this idea that we want the work that we do to kind of scale as much as possible. And that's really about instant and frictionless transactions on an account-to-account basis through a richer information, ISO 20022 format in payments. It's about having that upfront predictability and transparency to the transaction and being able to track that end to end. And then if I bring it more specifically to Asia, in Singapore and Southeast Asia, we're working with all countries to be able to increase the level of cross-border transactions that financial institutions are putting over the SWIFT GPI service, which gives you the faster payment outcome, tracked end-to-end, that upfront experience that ultimately the end customer, or consumer, or a business receives. We did a test in Singapore about a year ago where we took cross-border payments from all over the world, from China, from Europe, from Australia, and we had them travel over the cross-border GPI service and then through the domestic, somebody mentioned earlier, Pay Now service, I think it was Andrew, meaning that we're marrying the cross-border experience with the local domestic payment system. And that's a very big part of our strategy at the moment, is to bridge what is cross-border and domestic, and knowing that the domestic system, Pay Now in Singapore, it's not a SWIFT system. Yeah. So we're integrating and making sure that that domestic system can interoperate with the cross-border, and you can track the payment all the way through. Yeah. Big emphasis for us in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Australia. And then the only other thing I'd say about Asia Pacific is Southeast Asia, really, really important. And then as a marketplace, for all the reasons that the people on the call here know. And then the other part is China and India for us. So if you like that triangle between India, China, and Southeast Asia, that's where the commerce action is, I think, in the region. So that's a clear and really important part of our strategy.
Good. Thanks very much, Michael. Thanks for the question, Mohammed. Chris, do we have time for one more question, or no? Well, let's do the following. It will be really good if we can have a quick round, and perhaps we can look into the future. If we look at what's happening now, because if we're talking about how this process has been speeded up as a result of COVID-19, what do we see happening in the next 5 years? Where will Southeast Asia be in 5 years, and what are you going to do to make that happen? So this is hopefully quite an optimistic view, because we have concluded that things are changing very fast, and we have heard from all of you how your organizations are contributing to that change. But if you look 5 years ahead, 5 years isn't too long. How do you think things will look like? Let's start with you, Edmund.
Okay, so SMEs, the good thing about SMEs is that they are small, they are agile, they are fast to change, they are fast to adapt to new environments, the new norms, right? What we need to empower them is with information, training, education. Some more, those are in Singapore, usually quite fast to do that. But other countries, we need more. So AMTC at our end, we are actually launching a training course, a training portal with Pearson Group in UK. So if you are a member of AMTC, if you are not a member, please sign up, and you can access to all these training courses that covers a whole range on from digital marketing, on AI, and we of course have all this cross-border trade. I mean, we haven't even we talk about payments, we talk about goods moving through borders, but we haven't talked about data localization and data flow. But that's another big area that, you know,
we have left, Edmund. I don't know if we're going to talk the data localization right now.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. It's too big. But yeah, so looking at in 5 years' time, I think a lot of our SMEs, they will survive. They'll find ways to survive. I've seen some of them surviving through this pandemic. Some of them are blooming. Some of them have reinvented themselves. They were offline and now they are online, and they tell me, I've run out of my goods to sell online because business booming. What to do? You know. So 5 years from here, I think SMEs will survive very well.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Edmund. How does Mdec, if you look, see the future 5 years ahead?
Well, for us, being the government agency leading the digital economy, we definitely have to say good, right? But anyway, I think the reality is we do feel very positive about it. Of course, COVID-19 has brought tremendous negative impact to our life and economy. But I think digitalization is definitely the way to go, and it has proven itself in the current situation in Malaysia, at least, if not, I think all the countries are sharing the same sentiment in this case. So from Mdec perspective, we are keeping our momentum. for the next couple of years in terms of digitalization. If I can share a bit more, for the last 6 months, we have rolled out a lot of programs to get the SMEs to digitalize, to use the word for survival's sake. But the next couple of years, we are going beyond that to make sure that they future-proof their business, and we see tremendous opportunity there. And we are also, as I mentioned much earlier during the introduction, we are also focusing a lot on digitalizing the skill sets, the technical skill sets required to support the digital economy, as well as getting more companies to set up their digital operations here in Malaysia, just like any countries in the region, because we do believe firmly that this is the way to go. And definitely ASEAN is firmly entrenched in the future of digital economy.
Thank you very much, you. Bambang, SAP, Southeast Asia, in the next 5 years.
Yeah, so the way I look at it, actually, there's going to be a rise of ecosystem that is happening actually in Southeast Asia, right? So this is where a platform actually will become an important foundation actually to bring the buyer, the suppliers, the logistics, transportation companies, and even actually the financial institution together, right? So there's the emergence actually of the digital physical supply chain as well as the financial supply chain will come actually together, right? As the SMEs in Southeast Asia is going to go through a massive automation in the next 5 years, I would say actually that will help the connection actually between all these different players can come together. In fact, actually, I didn't mention this earlier, but we also work with, with the government in Singapore, with MAS, together actually with MasterCard, PwC, Global Linker, right? So where we basically try to create a Meta Hub platform actually where we bring actually all these different ecosystem together using one of our technology, Ariba network, right? So which is one of the largest, is in fact actually the largest B2B marketplace network in the world that is coming actually from SAP Ariba network. So I see actually that this rise of digital ecosystem as the SMEs is also digitizing the way that they operate, and all the different players actually will come together.
Thank you very much, Bambang. Michael, you already talked a lot about the future. Anything more? Where does SWIFT things will be in 5 years?
So for Southeast Asia, I have a very strong view that this region will have a much larger place in the global economy than it does today. So watch out, other parts of the world. Yeah, this region is hot, and then if I look at how that plays into the financial industry, look towards the trade industry having a lot less paper. So this process of dematerialization is going to accelerate, and you're going to have the trust and legal confidence around that. And then at a cross-border payment level, you're going to see payments going faster, ideally instant, with lots less friction on an account-to-account basis between banks. So I think that's the future I see, right? And the financial industry is clearly a critical partner for the overall economies in this part of the world to realize it's true and worthy ambition, I think, on the global stage.
Thanks very much, Michael. It's fantastic to see how we are all working on this. We've seen the future, and the future for ASEAN is bright. I think Chris agrees. Let me hand back over to you, Chris. Thanks very much for all your contributions. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you, everybody. That actually was a very fascinating discussion. It's good to hear you're also positive about the next 5 years. If you read our survey, which came out yesterday, it was not perhaps so positive, but I tend to agree with Michael as well. I think ASEAN does have a bright future if they can get their act together. We can sort out some of those trade frictions and the digital frictions as well. So again, thank you, Hans. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Edmund. Thank you, Bambang. Thank you, Michael. Fascinating discussion. Another webinar coming up in a couple of weeks' time on digital transformation. We have EDB and IMDA from Singapore joining us on that one. And then hopefully one more a week or so after that with Thailand involved as well. Wish you all a great weekend. Keep safe, keep sane, and thank you very much again.
Likewise.
Thanks. Bye bye.